What if I told you that right now, without even knowing it, you are communicating to other people that you are low value? And when I say low value, what I'm talking about is something called mate value. And mate value is simply a measure of what you bring to the table as a potential mate. And having a high mate value gives you advantages in all areas of life because a man with a high value is very desirable and in demand, and people are drawn to him. Now, the problem is that many guys actually have a relatively high mate value, but they unknowingly do simple things that make them appear to have a much lower value than they actually have. Imagine if you had a maxed out character in your favorite video game, and instead of walking around with the finest weapons and armor, you chose to dress your character in a cloth robe and make him wield the weakest dagger in the game. The reality is that there are many behaviors and subtle signs that men give off that signal a low mate value, and if you're giving off these signals without even knowing it, you might want to consider making some changes to make sure that you are communicating a high mate value rather than one that is low. Now, first up at number 1 is low emotional intelligence. EI stands for emotional intelligence, and something that most people don't know is that EI is responsible for most of the success that you will have in life. So in other words, it is the 20% that gives you 80% of your results. So you definitely want to make sure that you get this one right. Now, the truth about emotional intelligence is that it's really just a measure of how much you know yourself, how well you understand other people, and how well you are able to create relationships with other people. Emotional intelligence is also how well you manage your own emotions. So for example, are you the type of guy that goes absolutely nuts when you get mad, or are you able to keep yourself calm and collected during most stressful situations? Men with a low mate value tend to have a low EI score, meaning they don't understand themselves, they don't understand other people, and they also have a lot of trouble building relationships. They're a lot like the guy who gets out of his car and chases another driver with a bat after being cut off in traffic. And next up at number 2 is social awkwardness. One of the fastest ways men unknowingly communicate low mate value to other people is by being socially awkward. And social awkwardness is simply being overly nervous during social situations. Now, I'm not gonna lie, we all have times where we get a little bit awkward, especially when we're meeting new people. But the level of awkwardness that a man with low mate value communicates is far greater than what most people would consider normal. And this all plays into recognizing and handling social cues from other people. Guys who are really socially awkward tend to miss many of these social cues and as a result have really rough interactions with other people. So if you want to avoid communicating this signal to other people, all that you really have to do is truly pay attention during social situations and notice what people are doing and saying and why they are doing it, and you will get much better at reading and handling social cues from other people over time. Now, next up is number 3, or the third thing that men unknowingly do that communicates low mate value, and it is angering easily. One of the greatest assets that a man can have is control over himself and his emotions. Because men who have a low mate value tend to anger easily, and they're the guys who are quick to freak out over the tiniest little things. These are the guys that are driving down the side lanes, yelling and flipping everybody off during a traffic jam, and they're the guys who throw punches first and ask questions later. Having control over your emotions, especially anger, is one of many ways to communicate high mate value to people around you. Now, next up is number 4, and it's getting defensive too easily. This one also plays into not being able to manage your emotions, and it's one of the fastest ways that men are able to communicate low value to other people. Now, we all know that guy who gets defensive at the slightest poke or joke that makes fun of him, and many of us might even have been that guy to some extent at some point in our lives. Defensiveness is typically triggered by an insecurity about something, but it is also a common thing among people who are very sensitive. If you happen to be the type of guy who is on the sensitive side, try not to worry so much about little jokes that people make about you. Because when you get super defensive and when you freak out about tiny little things that really don't matter, what ends up happening is that you end up communicating to other people that you are somebody who has a low mate value. Now, men who have a high mate value, on the other hand, are like mountains, meaning they do not anger easily and they rarely get defensive. Guys with a low value are like the weak branches of a tree, and they end up getting shook or knocked off balance with the slightest verbal jab from other people. Now, next up at number 5 is the 5th way that many men unknowingly communicate low mate value, and it's being too impulsive. Many guys confuse impulsiveness with being spontaneous, but these are two very different things, and one is good while the other is really bad. Impulsiveness is simply acting without thinking. Being impulsive causes you to do things that you will later regret, or another word that you could use to describe this behavior is being reckless. Most of the guys out there who are always broke tend to be impulsive because they are always blowing their money on things that don't make them more money. In most situations, other people see impulsive men as liabilities because they're usually impulsive not just when it comes to buying things, but also in their behavior. And that tends to get them into a lot of trouble. Now, next up, we have the sixth thing that men unknowingly do that communicates low value to other people, and it's having no purpose or no direction. As men, we have always been the movers or the shakers, meaning we are born to create things and to stir things up. And a man with no purpose is useless. Because without goals or without a drive or purpose, you have absolutely nothing to live for, and life becomes meaningless. And other people don't want to be around a man who is going nowhere in life, unless they are also going nowhere, and in which case they'd be a perfect fit for each other. Men with a high mate value always have a purpose or something that gets them out of bed in the morning or something that excites them. And it's impossible for other people to not be drawn or attracted to this type of guy. Now, coming in at number 7, we have something called a pushover. One of the most common ways that men communicate low mate value to other people is simply by being a pushover. And man, is this a hard one for so many of us. Being a pushover is being a guy who is too easy to overcome or influence. And the pushover is basically the guy that everybody else talks into doing the stupid thing that gets the cops called. But he is also the guy who is frequently used as a verbal doormat. The pushover is the guy who, in a group of other men and 1 or 2 females, is constantly getting dominated by other men verbally and emotionally. Now, the opposite of being a pushover is being a man who is not easily influenced or overcome by peer pressure. In other words, a man with high mate value is the guy who can hold his own in a conversational debate, and he is able to communicate signals of having a strong mind. Men with a high mate value rarely let other men or women disrespect them, and they also don't let their boss or coworkers humiliate them, and they have no trouble enforcing their personal boundaries. Now, next up at number 8 is the 8th and final way that men unknowingly communicate low mate value to other people, and it is depending on external validation. Something that really sets a man with high mate value apart from a man with little value is simply valuing your own opinion more than the opinions of other people. Imagine if your self-esteem was created only based on what other people think of you. If there's one thing that I've learned after reading over 100,000 comments across this channel, it's that if you ask the opinion of what 100,000 different people think of you, you're going to get almost 100,000 different opinions. Now imagine if 90,000 of those opinions were negative of you and you actually based your self-worth on those opinions. You already know what would happen in that situation. Men with low mate value communicate it to other people by placing far more value on what others think of them than what they think of themselves. And as long as you let other people's view of you determine who you are or how valuable you are, you will never be able to elevate yourself in terms of value to where you need to be. Men who have a high mate value communicate it by entertaining other people's opinions, but at the end of the day, they are always giving their own opinions the most weight or the final word. And if you guys are into money, be sure to check out my other channel, Business Secrets. The link is in the description. And with that said, until next time, thanks for watching.